You know, and I had the biggest thing I had to do was make sure that the board is getting the money is getting it.
Yeah. Licensing and sure that's it.
Yep. And the other thing is you want to put on your open place addresses. You just can't put P.O. box. Yeah, because then at least then you have a place to go. If you put a P.O. box for that, too much. Yep.
Thank you. I'd like to call. Hello? Hello? Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. Can I have roll?
Nine present, one presiding, two absent.
Please let the record show that Commissioner O'Neill and Anderson are excused. Commissioner Sorich, prayer and the pledge, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fellow commissioners, Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Sorich. We will now ask for public comment on any items on the agenda. We do have two presentations tonight, and you won't be able to speak on the presentation. So if you do have comment, this is the time to do it. And we ask that you please try to keep it under 3 minutes. And can you say your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Irene Scheidecker, 31 East Copper, and I'm here tonight to speak as a Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm here tonight to speak as a representative of Butte CPR, Butte Citizens for Preservation and Revitalization. Members of our group have met recently with Trudy Healy of the Citizens United Against Urban Decay, and we have pledged to work with their group to help them address problems and properties of concern in their neighborhoods. On our part, Butte CPR's part, this might entail more securely boarding up vacant properties to prevent squatters. It might entail helping to find buyers to renovate vacant properties that are essentially sound. It might entail regular monitoring of houses of concern. It might entail helping them find money, matching money for URA-eligible projects. And yes, it might entail pressuring county officials to get houses that are dilapidated beyond repair demolished in a timely manner. In the past, Butte CPR has had difficulty obtaining from the Community Enrichment Department a copy of the current list of dangerous buildings. We would like that list to be kept current, to state the date the building was cited and the reason it was cited, and for that list to be available upon request. Note that the R in Butte CPR stands for revitalization. The root word is vita, which means life. Revitalization basically means give new life to. Butte is currently facing a real housing shortage. We think that two birds can be killed with one stone by giving new life to older neighborhoods. We would like to see county officials be more cooperative and less antagonistic towards the efforts of our organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chief Executive. My name is Trudy Healy. I live at 111 West Iron Street, and I'm speaking on communication number 2023-64. And I just wanted to say we're looking forward to hearing what solutions department heads in our community have come up with in order to improve the safety of the citizens of Butte. We do not believe that any one department has the power to condemn a dangerous house, only that they have the obligation to work together to prevent urban decay in our neighborhoods. My apologies for using condemned and dangerous synonymously, because sometimes I get confused. I'm still learning. So sometimes I say condemn when I mean dangerous, and I'll work on that. I want to clarify that Citizens United is not talking about buildings in Uptown Butte. We are only concerned with dangerous houses within our neighborhoods in which absentee homeowners were not being held accountable to keep their properties clean and safe. We want to clarify that Citizens United does not want to take anyone's property from them. All we have ever asked for is that the absentee homeowners are held to the same standards in order to avoid criminals from squatting in and on their properties. No house is worth a human life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Bracco, 120 Low Street, Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners. I'm here because I submitted a petition to close off an area of Continental Acres that had not been developed since 1967. I feel like the application and the petitions kind of stands for itself. The people in that residential area, the majority of the people have signed off to close this area. And it's really a safety issue because of the motorcycles and the kids that go through there at high speeds. We've never had an incident out there where we've needed ambulance or fire trucks to go through that area, and we've never had an area. I had my parents out there, and the fire trucks and the ambulance have come through there on the main road, and we've never had a problem. So if you're looking at trying to develop a road through there, I think the main road works just fine. Like I said, we've always had people come in and out there. I don't think that if we had a fire at the house, that the neighbors are not going to get out. The fire would not go on the road. The road can't burn. There's no trees on the side of the road. So if you're looking at trying to develop a road versus close off that area, I really think it's a safety issue. And I think looking at the residents that already signed off on it, the majority of them did. They want a quiet neighborhood to live in. They want a dead-end area. They want a cul-de-sac area. There's hundreds of thousands of places that have dead ends, that have cul-de-sacs, that there's no way in and out. We feel that the residents, as I went through and re-talked with them, is that if you open up this area, we're going to open up to vandalism and more people coming through there, and the majority of the residents do not want this. So I hope when you look at this petition tonight, you look at the fact that the majority of the people out there would like this area closed and do not want a road developed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Frederickson, Council, CEO Gallagher. My name is Kathy Tuddy. I live at 927 Hornet Street. I am a member of the Parks and Rec Board. I'm here to speak to you about communication regarding the master plan for Parks and Rec. What I want you to know is who we got to work with as members of the Parks and Rec Department in creating this plan. They call it the PROST, the PROST plan. We call them persistent, resistant, often silly, and totally responsive people. They've done an amazing job in the work that they've done to talk to everybody that they could find to talk to, and I hope that you'll listen carefully to their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. No more public comment. We'll move into the report of the chair. I'll keep it short since we have a lot on here, but I just want to thank everyone for being here and taking an active role in your community. I really appreciate it. And I'll also send it over to Commissioner Shea for a report on Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. Bill called me, gave me a call right before the meeting tonight, wanted me to thank everybody for all the well wishes and the prayers that have been going up on his behalf. He's been out in Seattle. I took some notes here. He said he's feeling great. everything that has gone right so far, everything has gone right that could go right, and nothing that could have gone wrong went wrong. So he is in great spirits. His outlook is very positive. He'll be in Seattle for another week, and then he's looking forward to being home and joining us again.
All right. Thank you. We'll move into presentations. Communication number 2023-68, Bob Lazary, BSB Parks and Recreation Director, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for a presentation by Water and Environmental Technologies and SCJ Alliance on the Parks Master Plan on February 8th, 2023, Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson.
Yeah.
I'm Ed Hurd. I am the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator with the Parks and Rec Department. Director Lazary would like to extend his apologies for not being here this evening, as he did have a prior commitment. So with that, I would like to thank you guys for allowing us time on tonight's agenda to have a presentation of our final draft of the Parks Master Plan. And the strategy going forward after we get through with this will be to have this plan given to the Planning Department for review. The Planning Department will then ask the Planning Board to have it placed on as an appendix to the comprehensive plan. And I am under the understanding that it is currently on the February Planning Board's meeting. So with that, I would like to introduce you to the two people that will be giving you the presentation tonight, and that's Principal Architect for SCJ Studios, and that would be Mark Garth, and then Stephen Coe, who is the Senior Planner for Water and Environmental Technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you. Commissioners, Chief Executive, thanks for having us tonight. We're honored to be able to present our findings for the Park Master Plan this evening. I'm Mark Garf with SCJ Alliance here in Butte. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm joined by Stephen Coe from Water and Environmental Technologies, engineer. We teamed up on this project, and just to echo Kathy Tuddy's comments, it was a joy to work with both the Parks Department and the Parks Board. Everyone was very helpful and forthcoming in giving us information. So with that, first slide. Oh, I'm the guy. There we go. The last time we presented to council was back in May, and at that time we were about a third of the way through the master plan, and so I won't review what we've already talked about, but we did update the Parks Vision Statement. We updated the Parks Inventory, which was quite long, and we finished our public engagement with some community events and surveys. And so we're going to take it from our peer community comparison, needs and level service analysis, and then I'll talk about the capital improvement program and some of the recommendations that we've made. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
Thanks, Mark. Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners, thank you for having us. Again, I said this last time, and I'll say it again, thank you for the opportunity to work on this. This was a fun and exciting plan. I think you'll be very happy with the results and what's in front of you. I did send a full copy to the commissioners this afternoon. I'm sure you haven't had a chance to read all of it. It's quite lengthy. But we'll go through and try to hit you on all the top parts. So looking at the demands and needs analysis and the peer community comparison, we looked at, chose from actually 12 different communities. We ended up boiling it down to three communities, which I'll identify in 1 second. But in that, we looked at various metrics to try to normalize and show you what's going on and boil it down to where we stand in comparison to these groups. So we, of course, looked at the current population, the density, the park acres per 1,000 residents, trail miles per 1,000 residents, existing staffing, and then funding sources and operating costs per capita. So looking at the population, unfortunately, as we know, or maybe fortunately, Butte-Silver is pretty unique. We're a city, county conglomeration, but it makes it hard to find another city county to compare directly to. So we broke it out, both Butte-Silver and Butte, or this look, At the time, we're looking at 2019 numbers. Butte population was 34,000, give or take, and boiling that down to the urban area is around 31,000 is what we've been using. We're actually going to use 34,000 for most of our analysis through this, just to be as conservative as possible. Looking at Helena, they're pretty close to the same population. Idaho Falls a little bit bigger, Cedar City pretty close. Population density per square mile, obviously if we pull the whole county in, we're looking at 48, people per square mile. But you take that down to the urban area where most of the population lives, and we're right in the same game as the rest of the communities. There, is that a little better? So looking at parks, though, we're pretty park rich. We've got a lot of park properties coming in at 56 total, 54 in the urban area. That's nearly double almost the other communities, or somewhere around there. Total park areas, you look at Butte-Silver Bow, we've got 4,200 almost, but that's including Thompson Park, which we'll look at areas with and without Thompson Park so you can get a feel for that. The Butte urban area takes Thompson Park out of it at almost 700 acres. Idaho Falls kind of eclipse us with that, but they also have twice the population. Boiling that down to park acres per 1,000 residents, the Butte urban area, we're at 22, so we're sitting pretty good. We're pretty close to Idaho Falls, which is almost twice our population. And total trail miles, this is where we really shine. Helena's got Mount Helena that they've got quite a bit of trails in, so that pumps them way up, but we've got 67 miles of trails in the area. And getting it down to 1,000 residents, we're doing pretty well there. So proposed level of service. The best way to look at that is look at a national standard. So the NRPA, the National Recreation Parks Administration, sets standards for per 1,000 residents. So that's why we're using this metric. If you compare our lands at the column 3, 4, and 5, or 2, 3, and 4, excuse me, on this, you can see our mini parks, we're right in the mix there, so we're not really proposing an increase in level of service. Neighborhood parks, and stop for 1 second. So neighborhood, mini parks, neighborhood, community parks, regional parks, as you can imagine, they get a little bit bigger, and there are formal definitions in the parks plans for what each one of these means and the areas they're expected to serve. In drilling down, looking at regional parks, if we include Thompson Park, we're looking at 104 acres per 1,000 residents. That's a little bit more than the proposed level of service of 5. But you take that out, and our regional park here is Stodden Park right now. So you take those acres and our population, and you're actually looking at being a little underserved for the size of town we are. They don't really have a good standard for special use area or open space greenways, so we're not suggesting really any change there. Especially the open space greenways, we're sitting pretty good at 10.5 acres per 1,000. So jumping forward, looking forward 20 years, we took a pretty conservative approach of saying that maybe we would increase growth in Butte at 1% per year, which would put us at 2042 at 42,800 people. So looking at that and using the same kind of metrics with the National Recreation Parks Association, we can get what our net land needs for targeting for 20 years from now. So if you can look at that last column, you can see we need to add a little over 2 acres of mini parks, 15 acres of neighborhood parks, community parks, 76 acres. For including Thompson Park, we're obviously sitting pretty good again. Regional parks, though, without Thompson, we need to add nearly 100 acres. So you can kind of get a feel for, as we grow, we need to add parks. It's, pretty standard. It should be built in. Okay, we're going to take a breath. Now we're going to talk money. This is where it gets fun. All right, so to do the comparison, we actually debated quite a while on what what year to use. So we chose fiscal year 19 for two main reasons. One, it's mostly pre-COVID, and two, it also had Ridgewaters on board for an entire year. So we're able to capture what happened at Ridgewaters and the expenses there, but not capture the loss that happened during COVID, and also pulling out some of the gift monies from the Washington Group and various other organizations. So if you look there, just look at the straight departmental expenses, we're sitting pretty low, pretty much close to half of, or even less than half of the next lowest city at Cedar City, Utah. You take that per capita, it looks, just as bad, $50 per person versus $104, the next lowest. Departmental revenue, this is money coming in, part of it being Ridgewaters or other services that are provided. You, again, don't look great there. You jump down a couple columns there to cost recovery. We look really good there, but that's because we're not spending as much, but we're bringing in a reasonable amount of money in comparison. And then the percentage of general fund that's allocated to the department is 3.9%. That's just a little bit more than half of the next lowest city that that's got general funds coming into it. And then our FTEs, that's a pretty big deal there. We're sitting at about 18 full-time equivalent employees. You boil that down to per 10,000 residents, we're at 5.3, the next closest to are 7.4. So what that tells me is a couple things. One, our parks people are doing a hell of a good job doing with what they've got in front of them and doing to keep these parks up. But two, they need some help. So taking those same numbers and start looking at them graphically, it really paints a better picture. You can see it. You can see how we're low on just about everything except for this department recovery. But as I said, that is skewed because we have a lot less money allocated to the Parks Department in the first place. So we look at our general fund versus special revenue funds. Over on the staffing side, we talked about that. We're on the low side there at 5.3 per 10,000. Then the percentages of general funds allocated, Butte-Silver Bow's, considerably less than just about everybody else, especially Idaho Falls or Helena. And you can see that our percentages of the general fund versus special funds, in this case, the special funds are SARTA and what's the other one, Mark?
I didn't quiz me.
I'm sorry. Anyway, I've got it in my notes too if we need to drill into that, but
and Ridgewaters.
Thank you. So you can see that there's a lot of money from general fund coming into Butte, but not a lot of money total that we're really spending on the parks. And before I throw it over to Mark, just talk to you about how important parks are to the people. So in the surveys we did, we had over 1,000 people respond to our surveys, and you can see one of the questions we asked is how important are parks and trails to the Butte community. Number 10, the most important one, we got 74%. But if you look at 8, 9, and 10, which are in the top section there, that adds up to 95% of the respondents think that it's very important for parks in Butte. And I'll turn it over to Mark, and he'll talk about the fun stuff.
Thanks, Stephen. So I'm sorry. I'm in the recommendations section now of the master plan. So we're going to talk about a few things that we're recommending, some changes that we should probably make to the Parks Department going forward in the future to really make it as good as it can be. And as you saw on the previous slide, the people of Butte really do love the park system, but they also know it can be better. And that came up again and again in our interviews, in our public outreach, in our online poll. So one of the things we're recommending is an organizational change, a transition to a Parks and Recreation Department that is independent from Public Works. So right now, Parks is part of the Public Works Department, and this would do a few things for the department. First of all, it would ensure reliable funding. So, for instance, a broken sewer main wouldn't defund a planned project for parks. It would improve departmental stability. It allows Parks Department growth and specialization of roles. It clarifies shared employees. There are some shared employees across departments. And it would clarify other departments' overlap of parks duties and vice versa. So the way this looks right now, we've got Public Works, which is a big important organization for the city of Butte, but it also has parks within it. And then parks is just broken up into sort of 5 sections: natural areas and trails, taking care of developed parks, future projects when and if they come around. We have an arborist and some recreation coordination. So most other Montana cities look like this. There's no public works involvement, although they would probably still share some resources and equipment. But there's a parks department, and they have kind of there's 3 main branches. You've got a planning and designing side. So you've got a planner in there that is looking at future projects and looking to upgrade assets. And then you've got parks operations, again, taking care of the trails and the developed parks. And usually this also includes historic and cultural sites, of which we have quite a few. And then, of course, the arborist. And then the 3rd branch would be recreation coordination. This would be community outreach and developing new programs. So talking about parks funding, this is from our online survey. We asked, should Butte-Silver Bow change how much it invests in parks, recreation, and trails? And the answer was yes, increase investment, or no, funding investment is adequate. And 82% of the people that responded to this said yes. We had over 1,000 people take the survey, or at least do one question and then move on. And we got a really great response on this. So the Parks Department is important to the city of Butte, and they want to see it better. So funding priorities. As Stephen talked about before, Butte-Silver Bow has lower spending on parks per capita. We have fewer full-time employees, and we're trailing our peer cities in all of the other financial metrics. So why would we make upgrades to Butte's park system? I'm just going to read this. Because parks are not merely amenities. They are necessities providing essential recreation, exercise, inspiration, community engagement, and needed respite from daily life. Parks are the one county asset equally available to all Butte's residents, especially important to those at the bottom of the income spectrum. So funding priorities. There's a few more reasons to do this, to increase the funding in parks. As time goes on, there will be more pressure on the park system. We've got population increases that are already happening, geographic shifts in where people live, changes in recreation types. People change the sports that they are interested in, and we need to be flexible and provide those amenities. We've got younger families coming back to Butte, and we need to think about climate change, and parks can be a big part of that. Health and wellness. An active population improves both individual and community level health outcomes. Parks are a big part of that. Property values and attracting new residents. Study after study show that really great parks add vitality to a city, and they positively affect adjacent residential and commercial property values. And then retirees and mobile workers, they look for quality of life when relocating. The Parks Department is a huge part of that. Visitor spending, new facilities attract tourists and tournaments, putting heads in beds, and the environment. So as I mentioned before, parks can help manage climate change, the heat island effect, and they can increase water and air quality. So how do we fund this park system? Many of you probably know some of these funding options. We've got short-term options, which is getting foundations and donations to help out with the park system, joint funding partnerships, grants. The Superfund settlement continues to provide some funding to parks, but that won't last forever. The URA, we've got bonds, and then the sale of surplus property, which I'm going to talk more about in a second. And then longer term options would be to increase funding out of the general fund if it's available. Impact fees, user fees, the T-bid, Tourism and Business Improvement District. I hear they have some money that they don't spend every year. I can find a way to spend it on parks. And then SSAs and SIDs, special assessment areas and districts, and then a recreation district or a parks district. I'm going to talk about these two in the next slide here. So surplus property, I know y'all can't see this map, but Stephen put together an awesome map of all the surplus property in the county. And you can see that it's collected near the newer subdivisions, because as a part of the, when you build a new subdivision, you set aside land for parks. Sometimes it's not the best land, and sometimes it's not in the right place. And so we don't necessarily need all of this land. SSAs and SIDs, this designates the cost of an improvements of a specific area, let's say one neighborhood park, and it levies an assessment on properties. This would be a subject to a vote of the people. And then my favorite, or our favorite, a parks district. This would cover a larger area, perhaps the Butte urban area or in the entire county. It's a special purpose district for providing public parks and recreation and maintenance within the geographic boundaries. It often includes cultural facilities. Many other Montana cities have adopted this: Kalispell, Missoula, Bozeman, Great Falls, Billings. And then the district has taxing authority. So again, it's subject to a vote of the people. Would the people vote for it? After we did our polling and our interviewing, I think the answer is yes. People love the parks here. They want to see them better. So a parks district is one way to fund these things. All right, now we're going to talk about some of the programs that we looked at for the capital improvement plan. I'm going to grab a drink.
Sure. So part of the capital improvement plan, as part of the whole master plan, is a capital improvement plan where we're mapping out details on a 6-year improvement plan. We have 6 projects that we've identified in here that Mark will go over here in just a second, as well as a more of a laundry list of a 20-year capital improvement plan with lots of options, but not as much detail in the plan, but that could also be fleshed out as needed. We've done our best to try to keep this consistent with both the comp plan and the uptown master plan so they can work in concert with each other.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. So just a review of one of the questions we asked in our big poll, the Butte-Silver needs. The number one thing on there was an indoor community center, and then trails, entertainment, upgrades to existing facilities, and on down the list. And so our 6-year CI projects include an indoor community center, making the original mine yard into a permanent park, which is part of which the Uptown Master Plan also recommended, a dog park in Uptown, improved wayfinding and signage throughout the city and the county related to parks, another trail connection. Butte-Silver residents love the trails and they want to connect them to other parks, and then upgrades to Clark Park's outdoor skating rink. These are our first 6. And then we also have a 20-year plan. So an indoor community center. So this would provide kind of a multi-generational facility that everyone could use. And it could dovetail in with some of our existing facilities here in Butte. And I can't see this slide, so I found it. And we're recommending that a local steering committee be formed to drive the project. This steering committee could look at locations, whether or not it's a new building or an adaptive reuse of an existing building. They would look at the different programming for the building, and the facility would be designed with flexibility to allow for changes in programming over time. And then the steering group would also explore funding options. So some of the things that came up in our polling that would go in a community center would be a climbing gym, other court space or gym space, pickleball, badminton, volleyball, a performance space or public event space, banquet rooms, indoor running track, a lap pool came up, a dry sauna, which we should really just do that at my house, an arcade, trampoline course, food and beverage, of course, a fitness center, roller rink or roller hockey, music room, and then kind of a book nook puzzle, something for people of all ages. So we, since we don't know where the building is, or if it's a new or existing building, or exactly what's in it, we took kind of a guess at what that might cost based on some other community centers that have been built recently in the Mountain West, and it's probably about a $30 million project. So next up is the original mine yard. This, again, was recommended in the Uptown Master Plan, and people really love it when they can be in the mine yard and at a festival watching a band on stage. It would be great to have it open, and if you open it year-round, you'll want to make some other improvements to the programming and activities and some of the site amenities. And so we looked at sort of all the things that you could possibly do to the park. A big one would be connecting it to the Uptown neighborhood. That's what that grand staircase is coming up from Alaska Street, bringing you right up the hill onto the site. And on that hill, there's not that much going on there, so perhaps there's a walking trail or interpretive trail, and with native revegetation, it could be a demonstration project of sorts. Other improvements would be security improvements to the mine itself. So if the park's open all the time, you want to keep people from climbing up on the structure, of course. Improvements to the sound and the lighting, putting in a dance floor. And then the big ideas would be changing the way the lawn works. Like instead of, it is sloping, but it's, if you're back there in the back, you really can't see over a lot of the people in front of you. So maybe we slope it a little bit more so that works a little bit better. And then behind that, put in some terraces where people can lay out lawn chairs instead of trying to sit on the slope. I tried that, it doesn't work. And then, of course, we would keep the teepees up there and then perhaps add some pavilions that people could rent because, as everyone knows, the views up there are stunning. It's a great place to hang out. There would need to be some other site improvements, grading, drainage, electrical, and of course, trash receptacles, and then maybe upgrades to the kind of the green room behind the stage. So everything that was on that plan, we tried to put a number to it. Of course, you wouldn't need to do this all at once necessarily. You could prioritize what you want to do first. Maybe it's the music venue upgrades. Maybe it's other things. Maybe it's adding a playground in the park, what have you. But the whole project comes out to about between $6 and $7 million. Uptown Dog Park. A location has not been chosen for this, so it's somewhat of a generic guess at what the things that you might need for a typical dog park. Typically, there's double fencing, and dogs have a lot of amenities now. They get their own splash pads often. They have their own agility courses, things to play on. Depending on how big the park is, if it's really big, you probably don't need artificial turf. If it's small, sometimes you need that just because of the traffic. So depending on where this goes, it would need to obviously be programmed. A good-sized dog park is about 3/4 of an acre. So using those parameters and all the things that you might need for a typical dog park, we came up with about $2.5 million. Fencing, retaining walls, irrigation. Depending on the site, you may not need half of this or 1/4 of this. It just depends. And then a trail connection. So once the Greenway Trail is built, or even before it's built, you could build a trail from the Copper Mountain Recreation Complex up on the hill and then down to the Greenway. There is a public right-of-way between the cemetery and Hollow Contracting. There's kind of a road on it now. It's got some utilities in it. It would be fairly easy to turn this into a trail and then connect it to the park. There'd be 2 road crossings, one at Beef Trail Road and then again another one at Greenwood Avenue. And then at that point, it goes on to the pole plant property where they're leaving a road for us in case we do this trail. Thanks, guys. And then it would go under probably the west side of the I-90 underpass, and then it needs to cross the railroad again, and then it would connect to the Greenway Trail. So 3 crossings. And kind of based on the costs of the O-Reach for the Greenway Trail that was just built last year, this is kind of, and including all the things that we need specifically for this trail, it's probably about a $1.3 million project. Wayfinding and signage. We heard a lot of feedback in interviewing and talking with the public and taking our polling that Butte could use some better signage and some more consistent signage. Sometimes you don't know that there's a park a couple of streets away. For instance, if you're if you're new to Butte or visiting Butte and you're driving up Harrison, you would have no idea that one street over on Florence is Clark Park. So a few small signs would help you find that park. And then once you get there, some consistent signage like this is Clark Park, and you put together some sort of program where the signs all have kind of a general look and feel, a thoughtfulness, something that says Butte. One thing that we really like are the arches, or the arch that they put at the big Butte open space. That definitely has kind of a unique Butte feel to it. And when you see that arch, you know you're there. And maybe we use that arch in other places at other trailheads. So as soon as you see the arch, you know you're at a trailhead. And then you establish the wayfinding program around some other parameters, and you allow people to make their way around Butte. Several years ago, there was a study of Butte's wayfinding. They found that it was terrible. It still is, I agree, and it would help if we could get around our city a little bit better. General cost estimate. This really depends on how big the program is, how many signs, how many trailheads, that sort of thing. We sort of estimated it just under $1 million, depending again on the size. And then the last thing, some upgrades to Clark Park. As we know, sometimes the ice melts really early in the season. It's still good today. I checked it today. It's fine. But last year about this time, it was pretty much shot. I think they call it rotten at that point. So one of the things we're proposing to do to Clark's Park, since, and this could be used year-round, is paving the rink. If you pave the rink with concrete, it's lighter, it reflects light better, it won't melt as quickly. But then put a cover over it. You can see though in those photos at the bottom of the page what that could look like. It creates kind of an amazing space underneath this big canopy on the ice. And then once you've built the structure, then you can put speakers on it, lights. It can be sort of an amazing place to hang out. And then you would make some other improvements around the rest of the park, maybe consolidate all of the, there's like a tot lot here and a swing set here and a tire swing over here and this and that, kind of spread all over the park. Maybe you consolidate that into one place next to the rink. And I think this could be a really great year-round amenity. I mean, imagine this in the summer, roller rink, you're out there roller skating, you've got the lights and the sound, amazing. So obviously the largest cost would be the roof, and then the second largest cost would be the pavement. We actually shrunk the size of the rink to make the cost a little bit lower, because it is huge if you've ever skated on it. And then we would make some other upgrades around the rest of the park. It's probably about a $4 million project. And then there's a lot more into this master plan that you can read through, but quickly, some highlights of the 20-year capital improvement plan, some new recreation programs, more trail connections, which everybody asked for, prioritizing unused land sales, safety upgrades, accessibility upgrades, more and better planting. That's near and dear to my heart. I'm a landscape architect. Additional upgraded restrooms. And then we have a short list of specific parks, and then we list out some specific upgrades that each of those parks need. Father Sheehan, for instance, we would look at restrooms, the fields, some other things. We could sure use an upgrade to some of our splash pads. And a lot of people ask for an indoor ice rink, a new one, because the one that we have is so heavily used that often the public doesn't get to use it. And then the last part of the master plan, we have some design guidelines, setting goals for the design, goals and objectives for the design of new parks or the redesign of existing parks. And there's even more on that master plan that we left out. I think it's 170 pages. So have a look at it. There's some good stuff in there. And that is all. That is all. Thank you for having us. And I guess we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garf and Mr. Coe. It's been a pleasure working with you guys and your teams for a while now. And great job. Appreciate the details. And I also want to thank Chief Executive because when he was Parks Director years ago, he brought the plan to attention and said that we needed to upgrade it. So I want to. He's kind of the one that got this all started many years ago. So we'll open up to questions. Commissioner Sorch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we got a long night, so I'm not going to say a lot. Thank you, gentlemen, for the great presentation. Very detailed, a lot of food for thought. The only question I have, were there any costs? You said there was 1,000 survey participants, so you had an 82%, 820 people in favor of some sort of investment. Was this $14 million put out there to the 820? Were they told how much the investment is going to cost during the survey?
Mr. Garf.
Thank you, Commissioner. No, Commissioner Sorich, we did not have any amounts for the projects when we asked that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. Thank you guys for your presentation. I'm also a big dreamer, and right now, I mean, we're all dreaming big, I feel like, on this. I guess to kind of echo on Commissioner Sorch's question, within that survey, were there any indications to your participants whether they'd be willing to, or how much, I guess, they'd be willing to pay in additional taxes? Because something as large as these projects, that's a huge funding source, will have to be, taxpayer dollars. And so was that included in your survey?
Mr. Garf.
Thank you, Commissioner. We did not ask a question about taxes or that type of funding. However, in my presentation, I shouldn't have said that the Parks District is the only way to fund these projects. There are many ways, bonds. In the past, we've received extremely generous donations for our park system, and we expect that to continue. So it doesn't just have to be a district or that kind of taxing authority that necessarily funds the park system. There's a lot of other ways to do it.
Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson, and thanks, Mark and Stephen, for the presentation. This is a visionary document, and I think that that's one thing that we need to understand, that it's a vision out there. The last time we did a Parks Master Plan was 2008, and when I became the Parks Director, we kind of dusted off and looked at it and said, what things have we accomplished and what do we need to accomplish? And we were able to use that as a guiding document that got some things done, that allowed us to go to the taxpayers and ask for a bond issue for the pool and to do some other upgrades that we had along the way there. So this is the big picture, so I don't want people to think that, we're going to go out and ask for a couple $100 million to upgrade the parks plan. But to their credit, what we're looking at, we are visioning what can happen, and I think there are opportunities for other funding sources. And public-private partnerships have worked extremely well. And so I think we have some opportunities to continue to work that level of investment and stuff. So we're going to have to prioritize and look at what we want first. But I really appreciate the in-depth look and the support of the Parks Board and the vision that we have. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Shea, and then Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate all the work that went into this and the efforts of the Parks and Rec Board and the efforts of you two. And you can't really convince the public to spend money unless they know what we're spending it on. So I love the idea of all this visionary, all these items. They're definitely, everything on there you said could be scalable. We can pick and choose. We can find a kind of a quote unquote easier project and make that work and show the public what we can accomplish when we work together. I especially love the cover on the Clark's Park ice skating rink, because I can't tell you how many times I see in social media comments, we need a roller rink, we need a roller rink. And I would love that. I probably wouldn't roller skate, but I would like to watch other people do that.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. Great presentation, great visions, dream big. As anyone knows me that's been around the commission knows, I'm not a guy that likes studies. So if I don't feel I'm offending you, but how much were you paid to do this study?
Mr. Garf.
Commissioner Fisher, $83,500 split between our two firms.
Follow up, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. You well earned your money. You've done a wonderful job. But I'm against studies, and the reason I'm against studies is, and I referred this to the Fire Commission and everyone else that I ever deal with, it's a great study, but how are we going to pay for it? Even over a 20-year plan. I mean, this is a dream that Washington Foundation has been great to us. I mean, that foundation has been so good to us, but I think that golden goose is gone. I mean, we lost our guy. He retired now. You know, $5-10 million at the golf course in Stoughton Park. I don't know if we're going to find people who are going to come up with $4 or $5 million anymore. You know, in Butte-Silver Bow, the reality is everybody wants parks, everyone wants nice things. But look at the roads. Look at these people out here who want demo buildings. I mean, when you got to prioritize in the county of Butte-Silver Bow, where we had a budget last year, $146 billion, we're talking more than that right here today. When you talk about this year's budget with the COVID money coming, we're around $176 billion. But we still can't keep up with taking care of dangerous buildings, potholes in the roads, and things like that. So I said, you well earned your money, and it's a great presentation. I just hope we can implement some of those ideas in the future long before I and some of my fellow commissioners are getting up there in age, pass away, because they're great ideas. But we've come a long way, and I certainly appreciate your services. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? All right. Thank you for the presentation. Oh, it was great, and really appreciate it. All right, moving on. Communication number 2023-64, J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for a presentation on the Dangerous Buildings Ordinance to take place on February 8th, 2023, Committee of the Whole meeting. Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson, Commissioners. Tonight we are having our all of our departments that work together on our dangerous building ordinance come forward together to talk about our dangerous building ordinance and what we can do and what we are doing as we're moving forward with our programming that works around the dangerous buildings. So with that, I'm going to let the experts that know the most about this come forward. I believe that we are going to have Sean from the County Attorney's Office begin, and then we'll have multiple speakers tonight that kind of talk about the whole process and how the dangerous building ordinance works for us.
All right. Thanks, JP. Thank you. Deputy County Attorney Peterson.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have copies of the dangerous building statute if any of the commissioners want one to follow along with. Probably a few extras. Where's my button here? Oh, that's what I tried. Left forward, right back.
Right forward.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. So as the chairman said, my name is Sean Peterson. I'm one of the deputy county attorneys. I do most of the work in the enforcement of the dangerous building statute, along with County Attorney Eileen. So this first slide here is just, this is all under Title VIII, health and safety. Any laws promulgated by the city, our powers rely on the fact that we are doing this to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And you can see that in the mothballing statute, under the vacant buildings. You can see it in the community enrichment standards, and you can see that in the dangerous building statute, the same language, right? This is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Dangerous buildings. So the determination of a dangerous buildings is in the definition. And we can do this to the extent that life, health, property, and safety of the public or its occupants are endangered. That would be the first thing that we have to meet. There could be a building with bricks falling off out in the middle of nowhere, no streets going towards it, it's abandoned. It's not a health or safety issue to the public at that time. We wouldn't be able to deal with a building like that under this statute. That's the first criteria that we have to meet. After that, there's 19 conditions or defects listed that will be addressed by those department heads that can make those decisions. Like I said, a building could meet one or all of these criteria and still not be appropriate to go through this process if it doesn't endanger life, health, property, or safety of the occupants or the public. The code enforcement officer under the dangerous building statute, the three people in Butte-Silver that can make decisions on this would be Kelly Lee from the fire department, Rusty Christensen from planning, and John Rolich from sanitation and the health department. Those would be the only people that would be able to make a decision on whether a building is dangerous or not. Also, I guess under that statute, we can pull in an expert anytime we think that there is either it's too nuanced of a determination to make. We will call in an expert to make that decision for us. Some of that reason is that if we're going to bring this to court later, if we have to defend this in court later, if I do, I want to make sure that we've done what we need to, that this is a correct determination, something that can stand up in court later on. This was brought up earlier. We don't have none of our buildings in Butte, Montana have been condemned. We've never condemned a building. It's just not part of any of our statutes or any of our ordinances. It's been stated in the news, public comments to this. It isn't simply semantics. It's a term of art. Condemnation would be taking or exercising the right of eminent domain. That would be the city taking something from a private citizen. Back in the day, this would have been common when they built railroads, right? They took people's houses, they took their property to put the railroad through. That would be eminent domain. That is condemnation. The other point is the majority of these dangerous buildings are abated through the process, either by repair or by vacating and securing the building. At that point, what happens is we have a statute that deals with that. Then it goes into the vacant building statute, goes onto the vacant building registry, and we would be dealing with it through the mothballing process. It should be checked on through that process. You could repair any building you want if you have enough money, right? If you got $10 million, I mean, you can do amazing things to a tiny house that nobody would think would be able to be saved. So the commencement of proceedings for the dangerous buildings, we get a complaint to one of the departments, planning, our code enforcement office, community enrichment. It goes to the right department, now would be in the planning department. And then we commence proceedings to cause, you can see here, cause the repair, vacation, or demolition of the building. It's not one's preferred over the others. We're always going to try, it's up to the homeowner what they want to do, right? We tell them it's dangerous, they have to figure out how they want to get it out. And then, so these are our demolition standards, repair, vacation, and demolition standards. So under this code, we have to comply with the following. The building shall be repaired. They have to provide an abatement plan to us. That's if we can find them, right? First, we got to notice them up. Here's your dangerous building. We can post the building. We can send out certified letters. Often it takes us some time to figure out who owns these buildings. People have died, they've changed hands in the meantime. It gets to be a difficult process. But the one thing I want to focus on here is number 3 there. If the building does not constitute an immediate danger to the life, health, property, or safety of the public, it may be vacated, secured, and maintained against entry. That is always going to be an option of a homeowner or a property owner in these situations. In that situation, we can't say, no, we're going to demolish your building, unless there would be a reason that we needed to do that. If there was a reason that we needed to do that, we would have to use the public safety exception in the historic preservation, because if we didn't, it just wouldn't make sense. The two ordinances won't match up, won't come to the same result, which is something we definitely don't want to see happen. And that would be under B. Not all buildings have to be vacated. Obviously, sometimes this is bricks falling off a building into the neighbors, right? We don't need to vacate a building in that situation. More immediate things, fire danger, Kelly, or if there's a sanitation issue, we can post these do not enter, keep people out of these buildings, but it doesn't, it's not something we do on a regular basis. A lot of times these buildings are vacant anyways. Way too many there. So our timelines in dangerous buildings are drawn from the length of an appeal, right? So we can't really do anything until 30 days. We posted the building, we noticed, followed our notice procedures. They have 30 days to appeal that decision. If they appeal that decision, it's going to put everything on hold. We can't do anything at that point. Once they've said they're going to appeal, or they hire counsel. After that 30 days, usually I get an envelope in my office stating that they've posted this as dangerous, they haven't received an abatement plan, there's been no appeal. The penalty section under the dangerous building statute is 814-080. Any person who fails or neglects or refuses to comply with such notice is guilty of a misdemeanor. And we'll go into that later on in the presentation. 814-100, if the building owner fails to repair or demolish, then Butte-Silver under this statute would be able to demolish these buildings. You'll notice that it says may direct that repair or demolition be accomplished by personnel of the city council under those procedures set forth there in chapter 3.12. I'll go into it a little bit more, kind of how this process works later on in the presentation for myself. Once that complaint is filed, more deadlines, timelines that we have to use in those situations. But at this point, I believe I will turn it over to Rusty Christensen.
Mr. Christensen, welcome.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Sheriff Frederickson, and Commissioners. My name is Rusty Christensen, Butte-Silver building official. The building official, one of 3 code enforcement officers who can use the dangerous building criteria to determine if a building is a public life, safety, or health hazard. And the other 2 are the fire marshal and county sanitarian, and we work very closely when deciding if the criteria determines a building dangerous or not. If needed, we can utilize a design professional to assist in determinations. Typically, the building official evaluates criteria numbers 1 through 14 and 17 through 19 as they relate to public health and safety. Some examples of the building official's evaluations are like structurally related or deterioration, exiting, life safety issues. And the building official and building office also reviews the abatement plan and receives them and tries to keep the timelines moving and whatnot. At that point, Fire Marshal Kelly Lee will come up.
Fire Marshal Lee.
Chairman Frederickson, Council Commissioners. For the record, my name is Kelly J. Lee. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief and the Fire Marshal. I guess my unique aspect, I deal with fire more so than everybody else does. So some of the criteria that matches for the Fire Marshal would be under Section 3, Section 8, Section 10, 12, 13, and 17, as they relate to public health and safety. So if we do have a fire, just because I might deem the fire, it might be a total loss. And that would be more for insurance purposes or the person that they can't live in that property right now. But just because I deemed a property total loss doesn't mean that the building can't be fixed up eventually. So it would probably go into a dangerous status, and then they would go through the abatement process, and then they could get it out from there. Other things that I deal with, if a building doesn't have proper stairways, no exiting, if there's faulty electrical wiring, gas connections, heating apparatus that's not hooked up properly, or any other cause determined by the fire marshal to be a fire hazard, then I can deem that property dangerous. And so then I work with I work with community enrichment on that, and then we start the process. So that's how I play in this. So, thank you. Thank you.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Council Commissioners, I'm John Rolich. I'm the Environmental Health Manager for the Health Department, and I'm going to go over the responsibilities of a building with improper disposal of sewage. That falls under the abatement of a public health nuisance or an imminent health hazard, and we are governed by MCA 50-2-16 and 50-2-118, and that are the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Health and the health officer. And so first of all, what is a public health nuisance? Well, let me first say what is an imminent health hazard. An imminent health hazard is a situation that will directly cause the exposure or transmittal of a disease to the general public, and that will have to be abated immediately. A public health nuisance is a situation that occurs when, that can cause an imminent health hazard if not abated. And so I'll give you three situations on buildings with improper disposal of sewage. The first one is dealing with an imminent health hazard. And that is a situation where they're inside the building, and that needs to be abated immediately. And with that, our staff, the sanitarians, will go out when we receive a complaint. If we see a situation that there is sewage outside the building, we will secure that area, and then we will actually contact the property owner and work with other departments to neutralize the sewage and dispose of the sewage properly. Once that is completed, we will then contact again the property owner and issue a compliance order. And the compliance order basically states that the structure, the building, is uninhabitable until the sewer is fixed. Once the sewer is fixed, the order is lifted. If the property owner does not abide by and comply with the order, we then will contact the county attorney and take legal action to make sure that the building is not occupied until the sewer is fixed. The next situation follows under public health nuisances, and the next one is about a situation when we receive a complaint on a property, a building that does not have proper sewage. broken sewer line, clogged sewer line, any of those things fall under that. And we will request, do an investigation, and then we will request from the property owner that we are allowed into the building. If the property owner refuses us access into the building to determine if there is a problem with the sewer, we will then contact the county attorney and have proceedings started for us to be able to enter the building legally. Once we enter the building, we will then determine if there is a sewage issue. And if there is an issue, we will then follow the same procedures, use our compliance order, and of course, no one is allowed to be living in the building until the sewage problem is abated. Again, if the property owner refuses to come in compliance, we will work with the county attorney to take legal action to make sure that no one's living in the house until the problem is abated. The last scenario is a little more complicated, and this one involves when we do not have, or we receive a complaint without any water to a building. And so then we will work with and coordinate with Public Works, Water Division to determine exactly what the cause of that is. If the cause is a broken line, or if there is inadequate plumbing fixtures or broken fixtures inside the building, then again, we will request that the property owner submit a plan of correction. This is a little different than the other two scenarios. A plan of correction can actually address two things. The first thing they can address is they can use a temporary means of supplying water to the toilet facilities to be able to dispose of the sewage properly. And again, I want to emphasize that's just a temporary fix until they can get in and have a plumber fix the problem. If they do submit a plan of correction and follow that plan of correction, we will not issue a compliance order. But if they refuse to do that, then we will post and issue a compliance order and follow the same procedures with the other two situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rilich. County Attorney Joyce.
Thank you, Commissioner Frederickson. If people are taking notes, there's just a typo on the first line. It should be 50-2-116 instead of 16, just if you wanted to look up that.
All right. Thank you. I noticed Mr. Rolich had it off the top of his mind, so it wasn't his fault, I don't think. Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Sorry. So the next thing that we're going to talk about, everybody's described their roles. Probably the most important part of this is communication and how departments work together and coordinate. It's quite a complicated thing. So first off, I'm going to show you an online tool that we've created. I'm going to call it a beta version. It's new. It's been created in about the last month. And it's an online web map that is available to all staff, and its intent is to have real-time updates for all dangerous buildings, all buildings on the vacant building register, and all buildings that have mothball issues. As County Attorney Peterson stated, in his first couple slides, those ordinances are really interconnected. So here's the list that you've heard of. This is the dangerous building list of all current dangerous buildings that we're tracking. And the cool thing about this GIS software is code enforcement officers have it on iPads in the field. So when they're taking notes or they're finding things in the field, it records photographs and notes in real time. And that really helps the county attorney's office, especially when these issues go to court and they file a complaint. there are times where County Attorney Peterson is up in court and he's saying, you know, they said that they abated it, did they? And he has the real-time information. There are times where, you know, members of the community or commissioners, whoever, are asking the chief executive, you know, where are we at on these? This is going to be a real big tool to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Can you go back to the slideshow? One thing that I truly believe that, you know, government can always improve upon is interdepartment communication and just being, you know, communication in general. That is something that we will always be able to improve upon. One thing that I wanted to note, this ordinance, this version of this ordinance was drafted in 2019, and at that time, the dangerous building code enforcement section moved to community enrichment. One thing that we've noticed, especially since there's been on this, is that you know, community enrichment would post the building based on the building official's recommendations. There's a lot of paperwork involved with that. You're notifying lien holders, property owners, there's certified letters that go out. There's a lot of paperwork. You're tracking, are these people signing on these certified letters? You know, so community enrichment is doing that. Building official is determining if the building is dangerous. Community enrichment's following up on, are they meeting their time frames? Building officials looking at permits. Building officials issuing permits. Community enrichment's looking to see if they actually completed what was in the permit. You can see there's a lot of passing the football back and forth. As everybody understands, the more times you pass the football, the more chance there is you're going to drop it. So that's going to change. This is going to come back in the administrative section of the dangerous building ordinance. Is going to go back to the planning department. We have the staff, the building officials, the one that's capable, you know, to retain design professionals and determine if the building is dangerous. We can handle the admin work. It's just it's an easy way to you know, take out some of the availability for miscommunication. Time frame tracking. One thing that I did want to mention, that there's different time frames depending on where you fall in the ordinance. If it's ordered vacate, if it's ordered repair, if it's ordered demolish, all of that. They come with, you know, abatement plan in 60 days. One thing that I did want to mention is that Butte-Silver Bow has never ordered the demolition of a building, not once. To be able to do that, we would have to reasonably say that it is impossible to be repaired. We've never ordered the demolition. We've always ordered repair, even on East Park Street. So what has happened and what has led to demolition is the owner comes back and says, I can't reasonably repair. I request that the abatement plan be demolition. And that's how demolition has, in the past, and the use of this ordinance has come about. Every time that the Butte-Silver Bow has posted a building, it's under that order of repair or vacate. They each come with different time frames and tracking, and County Attorney Peterson will talk about that. But the point where the time frames get crosswire is when the complaint gets filed in court. Judges and attorneys, they don't follow our time frames. The court has its own time frames, so that's kind of to where that's at, and then when court actions come up.
Thanks, Phil. Commissioners, so these matters are referred to my office. Obviously, I review, make sure that we followed each of our processes. I tell everybody that I deal with, we have to treat people the same, and we have to follow our own ordinance. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If we don't follow our own ordinance, just like the cop in a criminal case that doesn't follow the law on when he can seize something, everything gets tossed out. We lose everything. It's not something that we try to do in these situations. Basically, I get the file on dangerous building, the reasons it's dangerous. I file my complaint in city court. Some of the issues that come up after the filing a complaint is some of these buildings homes are owned by corporate entities. So, I mean, how are we getting this corporate entity into our city court? How would we punish them with a misdemeanor, is the penalty section in this statute, which is up to 6 months, up to a $500 fine. A lot of times we have out-of-state ownership. Even if we file a complaint, it's a misdemeanor complaint. These don't travel across state lines. They're not extraditable. If they stay out of Montana, they're going to avoid any of this enforcement action. Or the owner dies or is deceased. This is in probate. We don't really have somebody that we can deal with to get compliance. Once that complaint is filed, usually we do get more compliance. A lot of times I get an immediate phone call of, why are you throwing me in jail for this? Which isn't ever our goal. I mean, these enforcement actions exist to get compliance from these homeowners. Each of our ordinances has their own penalty section. As I said, dangerous buildings is 6 months, $500 fine. That would be for the violation. As I stated before, on these buildings that have been vacated, that have been boarded up, they would go under the mothballing statute or under the vacant building statute, but that would only apply to buildings that are actually vacant. If it's not vacant, we can't punish under that code section either. That penalty section is a $500 fine. Every day is a separate offense up to 1 year. So 365 times 500 is the maximum fine you could actually give under that statute. I don't know a city court judge in the state that would fine somebody that much. The community enrichment, community decay, there really isn't a penalty statute. If you fail to abate within 10 days, we can have somebody go out, abate it, and then we basically put the costs plus the administrative costs into a bill. If you fail to pay that, it goes to a tax lien ultimately. The timelines in this, everybody, 30 days is what everybody thinks, and after 30 days we should be knocking these buildings down, and it's just simply not true. That's just the time that they have to file an appeal. Like I said earlier, if they filed an appeal, this will stop. It'll sit in court until we've gone, or that would be to the board, until the board has ruled on it. If anybody's familiar with any of our other situations, that board appeal is appealed again, that can get appealed to district court. That's another 8 months that we're waiting for an answer, and we haven't even started dealing with the dangerous building yet. We don't see a lot of appeals, but even if it gets to the point where I file a complaint, if I file a complaint and we're going through the court action, they're fighting that, they've hired an attorney, it's not really something we can do to just go demolish the building at that point when there's active litigation over it. Just isn't something that would be allowed to happen by the courts. I think that's all we've got on once something is referred to my office. I will say, since I've been here 18 months, this isn't something where I'm fining people $500 for every day that they can't get this done. Like I said, this is more a way to get compliance. The more you don't comply, the more likely you are to see a fine in court, to see asking for a jail sentence, to see asking for a charge to stick on somebody's record. Different ways to get compliance, to get these owners to do something, because a lot of times the people we're dealing with are the same people I deal with every day. They don't have the money, they don't have the time, and that's where we're at, and it's as simple as that. Dealing with one homeowner who, her house burnt down, and we're calling every day saying, we need you to demolish this. It's not easy. That was the home she grew up in. She has no money, she had no insurance, and then in that situation, I mean, are we fining this person $500? Is that where we go? And in that situation, ultimately, she was able to sell the property. The new owners of the property had it demolished within 6 months. So these do work, they do take time. This is not instant. I have not seen any of these done within probably, most of these are out 90 days at least before we would be at a point to even figure out where we're going with it. We do try to get on them as quickly as possible to get these abatement plans in place. That does help, but that's where we're at. And I'll turn it over to Karen.
Director Burns.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Frederickson, members of council. I'm Karen Burns, Director of Community Development. So we talked about all the sticks just now. Those are all of our ordinances. Those are how we, as Sean put it, tried to get people to comply with these ordinances that have sticks in them involved in trying to get things right. Community development, we are in the position where we can, and Butte-Silver Bow can offer some carrots, right? We want the carrots to be big, to incentivize folks to do something and be able to take care of their properties. Some of these things we currently have, I know you're very familiar with the Urban Revitalization Agency, the URA. We can offer public-private partnership grants to some of these homeowners or building owners that have been noticed of an issue in their building. And we have done this multiple times with properties that are owned within our district that have been noticed as dangerous or in need of repair. And so we do that quite frequently. Just recently the URA had a strategic planning session, and part of our strategic planning session was held on January 17th. Part of our plan, our URA urban renewal plan, I know Commissioner Fisher doesn't like plans, but our urban renewal plan does allow for targeted neighborhood redevelopment projects. And so our board of directors voted to elevate that to our priority for this next few years, that we will develop some targeted neighborhood redevelopment programs. And these are within our boundaries, right? So they're boundary restricted. But there are ways that we can help redevelop infrastructure, redevelop housing redevelopment with those kind of public-private partnerships. Other things that we have done and can still do are community development block grants. These are federally funded grants that come down through the state of Montana that we have to compete for in Butte. You've heard my spiel if you've been on the council when we have community needs assessment public hearings and we talk about how we have to compete in this community to receive these funds for specific projects. And we have done that over the years for housing rehabilitation, infrastructure upgrades to neighborhoods. Other cities in Montana, the Big Seven, they don't have to compete. They just get an allocation from the federal government through the state that they could put towards these sort of efforts without having to compete for those funds. So we have to compete, and we can. And when we do, those hold us to much stricter requirements, HQS standards or housing quality standards, that we have to be met with those funds. So it is something that we can pursue and we can do, and we would be able to look at that as a partner to our targeted neighborhood redevelopment plans that we could come up with. And so we do plan to look at some of those things. We're looking at those with affordable housing in mind as well. New things that we don't have in place right now could be a revolving loan fund that would be administered by Butte-Silver Bow to assist these property owners in anywhere, no boundaries, in anywhere in Butte-Silver Bow. If we had some funds that we could help loan to these folks, to low interest loans to help them repair their properties once they've been identified, or before that, as we're targeting these neighborhoods and we look into them and see properties that are having issues, trying to reach out to them first with that carrot instead of bringing the stick first, right? I know that before you have a grant program that you're considering for demolition possibly, but maybe it could be a demolition and repair grant program that could be administered to possibly assist some of these property owners as well. And there is a lot of things to think about with that because, it has to be administered fairly. It has to be administered in a way that might revolve back to Butte-Silver Bow so that we can continue the program into perpetuity. I'm going to hit a button on this and I don't know which one. Thanks, Sean. Oh. I didn't do it. Using it. So of course, one of our goals would be to get property owners, whether they live here or they don't live here or they're an LLC, but get those property owners to embrace the responsibility to maintain and repair their property. It's, that is something that I have to always go back to. It's their responsibility as the property owner to take care of it first, right? But maybe we can help them. Maybe we can reach out to help them do that. This assistance need to be made available to those in need countywide, no defined boundaries. Like I talk about, the URA can only operate within those boundaries. and a way to ensure that those public funds that we invest into these properties, if we're going to invest them through a program, could revolve back to Butte-Silver Bow so that we can continue that program into the future. And there are ways that we could do this. I really appreciate Irene Scheidecker. Hi, Irene. I really appreciate Irene standing up and talking about her ability and willingness for CPR to participate in this program with us and help us. I think that is a really great idea and a great thing because it puts it back into perspective in terms of who can help. We all can help. And so I really appreciate that very much. Thank you.
So I'll close up, Chairman Frederickson. As you see, there's a lot to get into demolition, but one of the things that I think that it's what can we do? That's what people want to know, right? What can we do? And what we can do is we can coordinate our efforts better. We can offer programming that allows for some of these houses to be repaired. To get to the point of demolition, it takes a lot. And I know that there's been things said that said, don't tell us what you can't do, tell us what you can do. So that's what we're doing. We're giving the explanation of what we really can do, and that private property rights trump a lot of the things that we can do, right? So we want to make sure that we do that. But what we can do, we can coordinate our efforts. We can do a better job of notifying property owners. We can do a better job of enforcing the rules that we have in place, that we're coordinating our efforts, that we're going to the enforcement side of things when we need to go to the enforcement side of things, that the demolition is last resort to where we go. And if we get to demolition, that we have dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and we're not putting Butte-Silver Bow in a liability position where a property owner can come back and say, you took my property without any ability to do so, and legally you don't have a stance on this. So we've got to be able to be in a defensible position if we get to that position. Now, what can we do? We can do better. That's the number one thing. We can do better. We can work on these programs. We can coordinate those efforts together, and we're going to do that. I've asked and tasked my department heads to do this. I'm asking that maybe we go back on this demolition program and make it have some flexibility to demolition and or repair. But that committee would be able to be part of that determination because the demolition is a tough thing to get to. And if we can repair some of these homes that aren't to the point of demolition, if we can help them repair them and get them back to a usable condition I think that's what everyone wants is housing in their community that is taken care of. And so if we can work on that programming together to do that, that's what we want to do. That's not to say that we're not going to get there on demolition. I think that there are structures out there that we may have to look at. We'll work with property owners. If they want to get there, they can apply for this for demolition. There are properties that we can be talking to these owners. If they're there, we can work with them to get there without having to go to the stick, as Karen went to when we talk about the carrot and the stick. Let's try to work with some programming within our community to try to help these people, because most of the people that own properties like this generally don't have the resources to get there. So with that, I appreciate all the efforts of our department heads, and I think that I'll open it up for any questions for any of our staff members that are here for commissioners to ask, and then we can move forward with that. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, and thanks for putting this together. It's been very informative for me. I just have a couple comments. I counted these are the departments that are all working together on this. County attorneys, community enrichment, health, planning, historic preservation, fire department. So that's 6. And then we have potentially public works and probably law enforcement, so potentially 8. So I think the first step of getting that software together is definitely the first step on everyone talking together and being on the same page. So I think it's great that you're putting that together. My question is probably for County Attorney Joyce. So I was speaking with Chief Executive Gallagher, and forgive me, and you'll have to remind me, when we went through this in 2019, it sounds like we based a lot of the ordinance off of state statute, and does the state not have that statute in place anymore? Did they repeal it? Is that?
Chairman Frederickson, yes, there used to be what was called the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings, and that was a code that Butte-Silver Bow had adopted through its local ordinances, and the state did repeal the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings, indicating that they believed that you could use the fire code to address these kind of issues. But in order to use the fire code, you have to make a determination that the building's liable to fire. And we have a lot of buildings in Butte-Silver Bow that we may not be able to meet that determination. So we made a decision to continue to utilize the same provisions in that Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings. And we moved the where the Uniform Code was under the section of the Municipal Code under buildings to the health and safety provisions, and basically took the same provisions that used to be in the Uniform Code and made it our own local ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clear that up in case someone was like, well, let's just go back to the state, and I just wanted everyone to know that happened, and just to get it out there. So I'll open it up to questions for commissioners. Commissioner Sorch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm trying to formulate a good question. I guess the biggest thing I'm thinking, there's probably a lot of absentee landowners, probably a lot of out-of-state landowners that don't want to be found. So it's how can we make them more accountable? How can we, $500 a day, if they don't want to be found, or if they passed away, our ordinances are black and white. There's a lot of gray areas in here that we're, they're if they don't want to be found, or if they're down in the middle of Los Angeles somewhere, how are you going to find them? And so that's the hard part. And I'm not saying, I'm not putting a challenge out. I'm just saying, I'm just saying what can we do to?
So, Commissioner, I'm not sure.
Deputy, that's okay. Deputy County Attorney Peterson.
Yes. So I'm not sure there is a way. I mean, even in the criminal law, somebody can commit a misdemeanor in Montana. As long as they don't ever come back to the state, they will probably never answer for that crime. Now, there are things that happen to them for failing to appear in court. There are certain provisions here that would happen in the same thing if it's a single individual owner, right? If they fail to appear for court, license can be suspended, things like that, of that nature, driving. That's usually the number one kind of stick to get them back in the state. If it's a corporation, there's not a lot we can do in that situation. In those situations, and we haven't run into one where, at this point that I know of, that we have a completely absentee landowner. Usually, eventually, they will answer. I know through mothballing, we've had some from Texas, everything like that. But you're correct, and they come up here and we'll walk through the buildings with them, and they don't care about our community at all. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to me, being somebody that grew up here. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying is correct. It's very difficult in those situations to reach these people. And in those situations, if we did get to that point, that would be a situation where we'd have to, go to get a warrant to demolish a building through the courts. Okay. If that would be an option at that point, because judges, I think, would hesitate again, right? Property rights are so strong. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. Thank you, department heads, Chief Executive Gallagher. I guess I appreciate that, that we can recognize that there was a little bit of a downfall in our communication department-wide. And to be able to admit that and recognize it and be able to address that going forward, I think that that's important, not only between departments, but I also think with the general public as well. I mean, we're here because of people like Mrs. Healy and her cohort and everybody that has been coming back and making this whole issue really come to life and aware, and Commissioner Reardon. So I guess I have a question for Director Pipinich.
Director Pipinich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director Pipinich, with your GIS tracking tool, will there be like a section or a column or of some sort that the general public could go to the Butte-Silver website and be updated, even if it's just the status update, like where it's at? Mrs. Scheidecker was here. If I butchered your name, I'm sorry. But they want the community enrichment properties, that list, to remain updated. Is there a way with this GIS tracking system that the general public can go and find an updated system on this?
Director Pipinich.
Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Thatcher. I believe it's possible. I think it's something that we should discuss. That one that I just showed now has vacant building registry buildings on it too. I don't know that that's something that we want to advertise, that these buildings are vacant. There are definitely private property rights. We don't want to, if somebody's living in a house that doesn't have water and sewer and they're really down on their luck, I don't think we really want to bring that out and show people, display in front of the community that there are people that live like this. But I think it's something we could discuss with what we can, share generally with the public, with the county attorney's office, and we're intending to be open as much as possible.
Follow up, Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. I completely understand that, and I don't think that, that should all be put out. But I guess more of it is, I think a large frustration with these folks has been the lack of communication with community enrichment. And I will stand up here and say I don't believe that all of the blame falls on community enrichment in these instances. But I guess, like they were requesting updates constantly and had to be really on these people. And I'm just wondering, even if it isn't all of this information, because I agree, I don't necessarily believe that it all should be provided, but just something that, they're suited, I guess, that they can remain updated.
Director Pipinich.
Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Thatcher. Yeah, I think it's worth a discussion and make a determination of, what we should be providing and what we need to withhold to protect those that are sensitive in this.
Commissioner Mankins.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson, and thank you all to your department heads coming up and to explaining, and County Attorney, Deputy County Attorney Peterson also. I'm a little confused on the direction of who, maybe I'm confused and maybe one of us, or Chief Executive Gallagher. So is now Planning Director Pipinich Community Enrichment, who we're, because when I hear this and then all of a sudden it was like kind of stated that from his GSI tracking software, Commissioner Thatcher addressed Director Pipinich. I'm just want some clarification is all on this.
Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson and Commissioner Mankins. So what we're doing is community enrichment is still going to be community enrichment and dealing with community blight, and they're a part of this process, but we're coordinating those efforts back together. And so our enforcement arm of dangerous buildings will go back into planning. That's part of it. It was there before, and then we moved that. And so we believe the coordinated efforts where people are working in the same office together, when, as Director Pipinich talked about, passing the football a number of times, you do it enough, you're going to fumble the ball, right? And so that's essentially the analogy we're going with, is that so as we do this, community enrichment will still have their piece of this, but the enforcement piece is going to go back into the planning department and working together with So Ernie Srirachi, I'm going to butcher his name, Shiraki.
Yeah.
We'll be working directly with the planning department now and going back to that piece, if that answers your question.
Just follow.
Follow up, Commissioner Makins.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. So for the public, just to understand moving forward, I mean, what is the role of, if someone does feel like there is one of these houses that are out there, and who are they contacting first? Are you calling the planning department with Planning Director Pipinich, which I'm not questioning, but it just seems that just needs some clarification on where everybody's going to go. Or are we contacting community enrichment to move forward, and then community enrichment is going to pass the ball to Planning Department Pipinich, and then Director Pipinich is going to pass the ball back to community enrichment, and then community enrichment is going to pass the ball back to Marshall. I mean, just clarification for the people out there listening and in the audience.
Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson and Commissioner Mankins. As we talked about it, there's three people really in dangerous buildings that can enforce, and so community enrichment technically really wasn't the enforcement arm of that. They do with community blight. So the blight issues are still community enrichment. So anytime we have blight issues, we will deal with community enrichment. When we're talking about dangerous buildings, we will be passing all of those to the planning department. That is where we'll go to start with. Or if it was a fire, it could be our Assistant Fire Director Lee, or if it's sewer and water and things like that, then it goes to our sanitarian. So those are things. But truthfully, it shouldn't matter who you contact. We should be able to direct the person to the right place to get it done, and that's the biggest issue that I think that we've had all the way along. It's not if somebody goes to the wrong department. If they go to the wrong department, we're getting them to the right department, and that's the number one thing that we need to do here. And I think that's our goal moving forward, not to say, all right, I think that's been one of our challenges and one of our things that we haven't done extremely well is help each other know in the individual departments where to go, and so that's what we're going to do better.
Okay. Follow up, Commissioner Makins.
One last thing, Chairman Frederickson and Chief Executive Gallagher, thank you, and I know the community all would love. I mean, that clarification was great, and I think that's just where we need to go with that communication piece and making sure that if whoever is called, that we get that the public to the right department. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. As I am the advocate sometimes, talking about passing the football, 10 people, 10 directors. As I said last week, the week before, too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the soup. How the hell are you going to get anything done with 10 people trying to figure this out? It just ain't going to happen. We're at a point right now, and I'm going to make it clear here. With our strict enforcement of code to rebuild buildings, it's so strict, you can't afford to rebuild a good building in Butte. People can't afford to do that. But you can't afford to tear them down. So what good's 10 people gathering around going to solve? We either got to do one thing. I mean, I've been kicking this thing around for 10 years, as I tell you all the time. It's got to come to an end. Sooner or later, this has got to come to an end. Are we either going to demo buildings or we're going to let people fix them up? When you got an inspector that goes out and somebody's trying to rebuild a building and they've invested money, and then all of a sudden they want to invest a little more money, and all of a sudden they got money invested, they say, well, it's going to cost you another $50,000. Well, people can't do that. And then you got people who want to tear down a building, they don't have no money to tear it down. I mean, there's a middle ground here somewhere, but I don't know where we're going to find it when we have 10 people, 10 directors meeting in a building. When we meet 12 commissioners here, we all have a discussion all the time. So when you get 10 people trying to resolve one little problem, I don't know how we're going to do it. And them were just comments I made. I don't need no response. I'm just voicing my opinion because this thing's been kicking around for so many years. It's crazy. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson, and thanks, Commissioner Fisher, for your comments. But we have to meet the legal definition. Otherwise, we talk about putting the county in a place of liability. And so we have to follow our ordinances the way they're written. And that's why everybody had to come up here and explain what their role was. Because if we don't follow our ordinances, we put our community and this government in a liable situation. And that's why it was led today with County Attorney's Office about what legally we can do and what legally we can't do. And, you know, I know that there are a lot of layers to what we're doing. And I don't disagree with you. Government can be frustrating, as we all know. But we do have to follow the letter of the law and how things are written, and we can work together and we can do better. That's the bottom line here, is that we've got to do better in what we're doing. But again, we can't skirt how it's written in law. Otherwise, we're going to expose ourselves.
Follow up, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, and thank you, Chairman Frederickson. And I understand where we're going here, but the thing about this, we're the legislative branch of government. You're the executive branch of government. As the legislative branch, we can change ordinances. And if we got to change ordinances to get this done, we should do it. But right now, we're doing nothing. We're listening to this thing happen for days. I've been listening for 10 years. If we got to change ordinances, let's do it. Let's get the county attorney, let's get somebody to write a resolution and get these things changed. I mean, I was here in 19 when we sat at that table and watered down that ordinance to where you got a $500 fine. You know, let's face it, they don't have no teeth. And when you talk about laws, state laws is different. We're talking about ordinance. These are county ordinances. I mean, let's make it straight. These are not laws. These are county ordinances. And we can change them because we're the legislative branch. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Shea. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chairman. I always kind of hang around and wait and listen and all that. Since I started on the commission 2 years ago, basically we've been arguing over this ordinance where it applies. My feeling is, and the feeling of the commissioners that sit around this table as we talk, is the fact it's an ordinance of selection. And basically it applies to certain buildings, what they want to do with them, and what comes out, hiring of engineers and all that. I like Commissioner Fisher, and I think there's been talk around this table about redoing this ordinance. What do we do till then? I want to go to Mr. Peterson. I really respect Mr. Peterson. I had the opportunity to go to Judge McCarthy's court where he was conducting a hearing, and I'll tell you what, this guy got a lot of enforcement behind him and a lot of clout. I like the way that he operates. I thought that was very, very handled well. At the end, I'm going to give this piece of paper to Mr. Peterson and appreciate a return. This is a history of the house at 739 South Main, which we're having problems with now. It starts in 2013. Very well put out, every call from police to community enrichment, blah, blah, blah. And as I sit here and defend that we're not trying to take anybody's property, I sit there in the front row and I look at Miss Carrie West and Danny Pressler's sister. Carrie's been living next to this place since 2013 with almost, I would say, probably 15 or 18 pages of calls by enforcement, and this structure is still standing now because this guy attorneyed up. Had this ordinance been enforced and processed as the way it should be, this wouldn't have happened, and we would have had a lot of these houses gone. I respect private property. Everybody in this room is a property owner. But the thing about it is, enough is enough. And I really like what's going on here tonight. I like what CPR has to say. They're coming in on this deal and all that. But I think we got to look at the people that have been suffering these consequences for a period of years due to the lack of enforcement by these departments, which was admitted to tonight, basically in communication. And I get that too, but we can't drop the ball on these people that it is affecting. There are some demolitions going on in that area right now, basically that are inhabitable. This house, like I said, here it is, we'll get a bunch of copies made, is we owe these people in this neighborhood that go to work every day, that are living next to these buildings, that people have been shot in the neighborhood, that are living in these houses and all that stuff due to lack of enforcement of Butte-Silver Bowl officials. And, you know, come on. We're talking about a grant to do this and help other people out. Why don't we help these people out? I think we need to work on this ordinance, but right now there was a word out that maybe we should use some of this money to help fix these places. I believe this will be my 4th time I've asked for how many houses were demolished in a 4-year period and the average cost. That hasn't come in. We don't even know what we're working with. But I believe everybody in this room owes a person that goes to work every day and is raising a family and trying to exist and rehabilitate these neighborhoods. We have to really look at their needs too. They're private property owners. So I think that basically we do have a long way to go. There's a lot of respect going on here, but we have to respect ourselves and what we're doing as representatives of the people of Butte-Silver Bowl. So I always get off on a tangent, but I think these are the things that we got to look at. Number one, we don't know what to do with this money. Everybody is around Butte now. We act like we won the lottery or the Powerball or something like that. It's a small amount of money, but we still don't know what we're dealing with. How much is it to demo a building? And at this time, I believe that this money's been earmarked for demolition by the commissioners to address the situation that we had in this neighborhood. And I'm asking all my constituents to keep that in the back of their mind, because I believe that this money goes to the demolition of these buildings that are up and helping out the people that live next to them. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions and then a couple of follow-ups, if you'll indulge me, just for clarification. The first one is for maybe Deputy County Attorney Peterson or County Attorney Joyce. To meet the definition of a dangerous building, does a building only need to meet one of the provisions listed in the ordinance, or does it need to meet multiple?
Deputy County Attorney Peterson.
Okay. Okay.
Follow up, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you. And the ordinance, that section of the ordinance, item 18, says that whenever any building or structure is in such a condition as to constitute a public nuisance as defined by Montana law, can you tell me which provision of MCA that refers to? Maybe we should have referenced that in the ordinance, but do you know, County Attorney Joyce?
Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Shea, I believe the section is 45.8, 111 or 112, but I'd have to verify that in the Montana Code.
Okay.
And, you know, we have used that section before along with the dangerous building when we dealt with the property on South Wyoming Street that had the building, the bricks falling off. And, you know, we were in court on that building for 6 months, and we still didn't get a decision by the court. And the only thing that stopped that proceeding was that the building burned down. So it's not as simple as people think. You know, back to Commissioner Fisher's question, local laws, ordinances are laws, they're local laws, but local laws also have to be, you know, evaluated in terms of their enforceability and their legality, and we have to be cognizant of constitutional protections that are in the law, private property rights, and we have to make sure that anything that we enact on a local level is going to be able to be enforceable and not struck down. And as I indicated, we're the only community that has a dangerous building ordinance, and so we want to be careful that it's an ordinance that will remain able to be utilized and utilized in a manner that is fair to all of our constituents.
Follow-up, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. I agree with you. I don't want to, nobody up here or down there wants to put the county in a position of liability. So I did pull that up while you were talking, 45.8.111, I believe, the public nuisance definition. One of the provisions says it's a condition that endangers safety or health, comma, is offensive to the senses, comma, or obstructs the free use of property so as to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property by an entire community or neighborhood, or by any considerable number of persons. Is that unenforceable?
County Attorney Joyce.
Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Shea, I mean, that's quite a loaded question.
I didn't intend it to be that way.
You know, it's a provision in the law, and we've used it, but it is an easier provision to enforce when there are concrete conditions that exist. For instance, you know, a property that is full of cats, and you know that there's a lot of feces and smell and odor. We've done that before. We've used it when there's been a great deal of junk property on a property that it is an attractive nuisance. It's the more subjective the public nuisance definition, you know, that what is offensive, the more that you're using subjective criteria, the harder it is to use that type of a provision.
Yeah, follow-up, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you. I wrote down a bunch of questions.
Oh,
please.
Deputy County Attorney Peterson. Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you for that. And so I guess then we go back to what does that mean? What is the subjective piece of it? Because harm is hard to quantify. If the state law allows it to be subjective, then it allows it to be subjective. But I appreciate that clarification. Hold on, let me find my little notes here. So I agree with Commissioner Fisher. You know, we are all interested in ordinances that work. We're here to craft ordinances that work. We never do it alone. It usually starts with a proposal either from a citizen or somebody in the executive side. Once in a while, one of the commissioners will pull something out and roll it forward. But I really do think we need to take a hard look at this ordinance. We all want to follow the ordinances, and as Deputy County Attorney stated, we must follow the ordinances, but that means we must follow all of the ordinance. And I do think that there are times that we maybe didn't, that didn't result in any great harm, but I think the letter and the spirit are one and the same sometimes, and especially where this is concerned. That being said, I do think a hard look needs to be taken at it. I think we need to identify what we believe is unenforceable. We need to stop wasting time on the things that we truly can't enforce. Like Deputy County Attorney Peterson said with, how do you enforce against a corporation or a company or something? I don't know the answer to that, but I always heard that the corporations were people, so I think we can find a way to figure it out, to levy something or give them some kind of a penalty. I don't know who can do that, but it sounds good anyway. Well, I think that's about all I had. I loved what Director Burns came up with the extra funding options. Those were options that I wasn't aware of, and so I loved hearing about those. And I would hope that we continue to make those available to people who do get on that list. Maybe reach out to them and point out some of those options to them. Figuring out a way to incentivize the property owners. Chief Executive Gallagher and I talked about that last week, and I do think we have plenty of ordinances on the books that if we really get serious about enforcing those, it will prevent many properties from getting to where we're at now, where the neighbors are just pulling out their hair over it. You look at a neighborhood looks very dilapidated and shabby. That's where a criminal element likes to go because they know nobody's watching. And that's not fair to the diamond in the rough house that's somebody's lived there for a long time and they take very good care of it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Fortune.
But just, my one question is, was there representation from community enrichment tonight? And I guess that's the first one.
Oops. Chairman Frederickson and Commissioner Fortune, the branch of that, because we were going back to the dangerous building ordinance, now that that's going to be in the planning department, we didn't have them because community enrichment now is dealing with community blight. We know that there was a lot of back and forth on, the frustrations around community enrichment and stuff. And so what we're doing moving forward was important to have that presentation as we're talking about this moving forward.
Follow up, Commissioner Fortune.
I guess just more of a comment, but I think the part of the mess and why some of these people are here is because of community enrichment. So it would have been nice to see some representation there, but that's fine. But
Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Fortune, we do. Ernie Schrocki is here today from Community Enrichment. He did come, but he wasn't part of the presentation of where they fall under dangerous buildings now. That was the deal. But we do have somebody that was here from Community Enrichment that now will be part of the planning department.
I think I would get at the department head. Yeah, Chief Executive Gallagher.
Chairman Frederickson and Commissioner Fortune, I think part of the issue was, I think that there was some issues last time that we were here, and so I actually, to move this forward of what we are doing, rather than to have a back and forth to what somebody isn't doing, that I asked Commissioner Randall not to be present tonight. Director Randall.
Okay, follow up, Commissioner Fortune.
so then you said that we're moving, and Mr. Mankins touched on this too, but Mr. Mankins, that's but if the responsibility is going to the planning and zoning, you were at a meeting 10 days ago that basically Mr. Pipinich kind of expressed that their plate's pretty full. I guess my fear is what happens now if more responsibility gets onto them, and that's kind of on another topic with permits, but I guess if their plate's full already, is that helping the problem?
Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Fortune. This already was together. The problem was they weren't in the same department working together. And so this part was part of the planning department. This position was in the planning department. It's putting them back in there. It's connecting it so that actually it should create less work between the two of them as far as communication goes between the two, because Rusty's position already was a part of the dangerous building ordinance, and so was Ernie's position was part of the dangerous building ordinance, and so connecting those together in the same should not make more work. It should make more efficient work together. And as you said, that meeting last week, really doesn't correlate to what we're talking about here today, but it shouldn't create more of a workload. It should actually be a more efficient workload.
Yeah, follow up, Commissioner Fortune.
Just my last question, if Ernie's going to the department, does it make sense to give him some authority on deeming a building dangerous? And I mean, it kind of seems like that's going to be his focus for a lot of this, so.
Chief Executive Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Fortune. That is the definition of an enforcement officer, so he is a part of that. So he's already, yeah. Well, he's not one that can actually order demolition. So that's the part that I think that that doesn't happen with his position, but he is a part of the dangerous building ordinance. Does that?
I mean, I guess what I was.
Yeah, follow up, Commissioner Fortune.
What I was getting at is, in my mind, it makes sense if he's the enforcement officer to be able to deem it a dangerous building. I mean,
Director Pipinich.
Commissioner Frederickson, Commissioner Fortune. So what we need to do moving forward is that we're placing the proper people in the proper roles, and that the people that need to make decisions have the tools to make them. Rusty's the building official. He's has the experience necessary to make those decisions. I can tell you that we are shuffling a little bit of staff, and we will be able to handle any increased workload. And just to speak to that meeting 10 days ago or whatever, that there's some tools in the motion for creating some faster permitting as well. So as the director of the department, I understand, and I will be able to make decisions on how to staff appropriately and to keep the department flowing. And as things get bogged down, we'll just readjust. I mean, that's the responsibility of a department director, and we'll make it happen.
All right. Any other Commissioner Callahan?
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. I just got a comment also, and first of all, I want to thank Trudy Healy and her group for doing all the work you did to get us to this point to where we're making some progress. You know, I don't go back quite as far as Commissioner Fisher does, but I know I've been here 6+ years, and we've been battling this since I've been on this council. And, you know, way back then, we had to get a dangerous building ordinance so they could start enforcing this stuff. Here we are 6 years later. You know, the group all came up here tonight. They were very well prepared. They've said a bunch of great things. We've heard the talk. It's time we start walking the walk. It's been 6 years, and I can tell you right now, the problem we had when I got here 6 years ago, I would say is probably doubled or worse than it was 6 years ago. We're getting worse rather than better. We got to start walking the walk. We can't keep changing ordinances because we can't enforce them. We had ordinances on the judiciary tonight. We had to change again because there's no teeth in them. Let's pass some ordinances we can enforce. Our people have an ordinance, a law to use. Let's go that route. We got to start walking the walk. We can't keep kicking the ball down the road and saying, you know, it's time. We got to change this. We got to change that. We got to help these people out. We got to do our community right. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from commissioners? Really appreciate the presentation from everyone that spoke, and the work will continue. All right, we're moving on. We still have a few other things on our agenda here. Petition number 2021-03, Dave Aguirre, Lance. Could you please keep the conversation out of chambers, please? We still have other things on our agenda. Thank you. Petition number 2021-03, Dave Aguirre, Land Records Coordinator, for a petition to close a vacant public right-of-way street has been filed with the Planning Department as provided for and within ordinance number 362 in Butte-Silver Municipal Code, section 12.06.010. We've had a public hearing on this. We've had multiple meetings within Public Works Department. And so I'll open this up for discussion or entertain a motion. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. This petition was in the Public Works Committee, and Chairman Mankins handled it very well. And we had a couple different meetings about it, and it was I think it was a majority vote or even a unanimous vote in the Public Works Committee meeting to send it to the full council with the recommendation to deny Communication 2021-03. So with any further conversation is available, I would make a motion that we deny Communication 2021-03. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Okay, can the commissioners please vote? Can clerk record the vote?
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Section 2, communications. Communication number 2023-35, Captain Doug Conway, Law Enforcement Department, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to hold a public hearing for February 1st, 2023, with the purpose of a budget amendment to accept DOJ Edward Byrne grant of $20,141. Commissioner Shea.
At this time, I would like to make a motion to place communication number 2023-35 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Can commissioners please vote? Can clerk please record the vote?
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Communication number 2023-45, Chief Executive J.P. Gallagher requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence in the establishment of the Property Demolition Assistance Program in Butte-Silver Bow. We will continue to hold this as we work through the application process. Unless, yes, if you have something to say, Chief Executive Gallagher, on it.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson and commissioners. I was waiting to hear a little bit if we were, if there was any kind of thought process of wanting to become this demolition and repair. But I heard what Commissioner Reardon said. I know that it was approved for demolition, to a demolition program. If that's the intent of the commissioners here, we'll continue to move forward and we'll have something ready by next week. We've had, I think I got comments from Commissioner Shea and I got comments from Commissioner Sorich about some of the things on there, and then we'll have that ready to go. But I think we kind of wanted to hear today what the thoughts were. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Communication number 2023-52, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting to schedule a presentation for January 25th, 2023, Committee of the Whole meeting for providing a summary of nutrient work group efforts and potential effects on BSB wastewater treatment plants. We held that presentation on the 25th, so Commissioner Shea.
At this time, I would like to make a motion to place communication number 2023-52 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Please vote. Clerk, can you record the vote?
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Communication number 2023-59, Amy Steinmetz, Waste Management and Remediation Division Administrator, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the agenda for DEQ Project Manager Dave Bowers to discuss the next steps at Montana Pole and Treatment Plant Superfund Site, Montana Pole, and answer questions that the commissioners may have. We were holding this for the presentation next Wednesday, February 15th. So we'll continue to hold that. Communication number 2023-64, J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for a presentation on the dangerous building ordinance to take place at the February 8th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. We had that discussion not too long ago, so Commissioner Shea.
This time, I would like to make a motion to place communication number 2023-64 on file.
We have a motion and a second. Can commissioners please vote? Clerk, can you record the vote?
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Communication number 2023-68, Bob Lazary, BSB Parks and Recreation Director, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for a presentation by Water and Environmental Technologies and SCJ Alliance on the Parks Master Plan on February 8th, 2023, Committee of the Whole meeting. We had that earlier. Commissioner Shea.
At this time, I would like to make a motion to place communication number 2023-68 on file.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Will commissioners please vote? Will clerk record the vote?
10 yea, 0 nay.
10 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Motion passes. Communication number 2023-69, Jim Keenan, BSB Water Plant Superintendent, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for a bid opening on February 15th, 2023 for supplying inline self-cleaning filters in the Tiffid pump station to strain out debris from Silver Lake water system water that serves the area. We will hold that for the presentation next week, or bid opening, excuse me. Communication number 2023-71, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners to schedule a bid opening for February 15th, 2023 for doors and openers for the Shop Buildings Road Division. We will hold that for the bid opening next week. Communication number 2023-72, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners to schedule a bid opening for February 15th, 2023 for a camera truck for the Metro Maintenance Division. We will hold that for the bid opening next week as well. Communication number 2023-73, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners to schedule a bid opening for March 1st, 2023 for the Excelsior Avenue Reconstruction Project. We will hold that for the bid opening on March 1st. And at this point, I'll ask for public comment on any matter not on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All right. All those in favor?
Third.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Good
you.
meeting.
Hey, Sean, you look really nice tonight.